I was about 3 days into a solo hike on the Appalachian Trail, somewhere between Hot Springs and Irwin, Tennessee. It was late afternoon, and I had stopped to rest on a big mossy boulder just off the trail. I picked that spot because it gave me a clear view in both directions and caught a bit of sunlight through the trees. Figured I'd give my boots a break and have a smoke before pushing on another mile or two before sunset. I was mid-drag, not thinking about much beyond how sore my legs were, when I noticed something weird down the trail ahead just far enough to not feel immediate, maybe 20 feet or so. This guy was standing dead still in the middle of the path, kind of hunched over, head tilted, watching me. I figured he was another hiker. No big deal. People cross paths out there all the time. But the way he was standing, it wasn't just how he looked. The getup was creepy as hell. It was the way he felt. Like the woods themselves had gone still around him. It was all wrong. His arms hung limp, like a scarecrow. He had on this long, oversized coat, even though it wasn't that cold, and a surgical mask over his face like we were still in the middle of COVID or something. He even had gloves on. That alone made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Nobody dresses like that out there unless they're trying to stay anonymous. His entire appearance was so damn creepy in the middle of the woods, I quickened my pace. He didn't say anything. Didn't move either. Just stood there in that creepy slouch, staring at me. I told myself, maybe he was high, or mentally off, or maybe just plain lost. So I looked away only for a second. I swear, it was a blink. And when I turned my head back, he was standing right there, like inches from me. No footsteps, no rustle of leaves, just there. I nearly fell off the damn rock. He leans in and goes, "Can I have a cigarette?" His voice was all raspy and weird, like someone who hadn't spoken out loud in days. I was so stunned I just reached into my jacket pocket and handed him a cigarette without thinking. He stares at it for a second, then smiles behind the mask. I could see it in his eyes and says, "You got a light?" I nodded, lit one for him with my Zippo, and he took this long, slow drag like he'd been waiting his whole life for it. Then, out of nowhere, he starts laughing. And the second he started laughing, I knew it wasn't about cigarettes. It was about me. He was getting off on how freaked out I was. Not like a little chuckle either. This full body, bent over, wheezing cackle. The sound bounced around the trees and echoed down the trail. I just stood there, frozen, heart pounding in my ears, waiting for him to stop or maybe do something worse. He eventually wandered off, still laughing, disappearing down a side trail I hadn't even noticed before. I sat there for a solid 10 minutes, trying to steady my breathing before I grabbed my pack. I took off the other way, moving fast, but trying not to outright run. Something told me not to run. Not from him. Like he'd be waiting if I did. Didn't stop until I found a campsite near a shelter with other hikers around. Didn't sleep much that night, either. I don't know what his deal was. Maybe just some backwoods nutcase getting a kick out of messing with people. But the way he moved, the way he appeared out of nowhere, how quiet he was. I still think about it. I've hiked that section twice since then, but I'll never sit alone in that spot again. Not a chance in hell. That was a time when I live alone in small, beat-up rental on the edge of Pisgah Forest, right at the base of the Appalachian Mountains. Town's about 10 minutes out, but my road don't have streetlights or neighbors close enough to hear you scream, which I used to think was peaceful until all this started. I'm 23, just trying to live cheap and quiet while finishing my online classes and picking up freelance gigs. Most nights I stay in, headset on, gaming with friends or watching dumb horror streams. I keep to myself. I don't mess with nobody. But lately, it feels like somebody's been messing with me. Let me back up. About 5 months ago, someone tried to break into my house. Not once, twice. First time, I was asleep, woke up to the sound of the door handle, jiggling, real slow, real deliberate. I thought it was the wind or something. But when I peeked out the blinds, there was a shadow standing on the porch, just standing there. No knocking, no calling out, just waiting. Second time, I was taking trash out around midnight and saw fresh boot prints in the mud outside my bedroom window. I called the sheriff both times. They drove out, took a statement, and told me to get cameras. Said it was probably just a drunk hunter got lost. Yeah, well, drunk hunters don't usually know exactly which damn window's next to my bed. So when that third night came, I was already on edge. And I haven't slept right since. It was early spring wet, muddy, still chilly at night. I was home alone, gaming with my buddy Eli on Discord. We were maybe 2 hours into a match, and I had the headset half off so I could hear the storm outside. My cat, Miso, was curled up on the windowsill, ears twitching every time the wind howled. Then came the bang on the porch. Not a knock, not a tap, a full-on slam, like someone kicked the door. I jumped so hard I yanked my headset clean off and froze, listening. Miso bolted off the sill and ran under the couch. I muted my mic and whispered, "Did you hear that?" Eli said no, and I told him to stay on the line. I crept over to the door, flipped off the porch light, and peeked through the peephole. Nothing. I stood there a second, heart hammering. I told myself it was probably a possum. Still, I locked the deadbolt, slid the chain in, and cracked the door open just enough to let Miso out. She was pawing at the door like she had to pee. She slipped out into the night, tail flicking. I closed the door, locked it up again, and stood there, listening. The wind picked up, whistling through the trees like it always does when storms roll down the ridge. I turned back to my game, tried to shake it off. 10 minutes later, I heard the handle jiggle. Not soft this time. Rough, like someone was trying it. I didn't breathe, didn't blink. Then came this sound I will never forget, slow, deliberate scratching. Fingernails or something harder, dragging across the glass pane in the door. It wasn't fast. It wasn't random. It was intentional. I backed away so slow I could hear my own heartbeat echo in my ears. My phone was on the coffee table. I snatched it up and dialed 911, whispering to the dispatcher what was happening. I was barely able to get the words out. "There's someone at my door," I said. "He's scratching the glass. Please, send someone. Please." She stayed on the line with me. I grabbed my dad's old hunting knife from the drawer and stood there in the dark, just watching the door. The scratching stopped. Silence. The dispatcher kept asking me questions, telling me to stay put, don't open anything, don't go outside. I kept asking her, how far out are they? Where are the cops? 10 minutes. 15. By the time the cruiser pulled up, whoever was out there was gone. All they found were footprints muddy, boot prints circling the porch and window. No signs of forced entry. Nothing on the cameras, either. Just static, like someone had disabled them or moved too fast to catch. The footage glitched right at 1:16 a.m. When the scratching started, they filed another report, told me to stay alert and get a firearm if I didn't already have one. I didn't sleep for 2 days after that. Now, I don't want to jump to conclusions, but I know who it was. My ex. That son of a bitch has been off his rocker ever since I dumped him last year. We were together for maybe a year and a half, and he always had a temper-short fuse, mean, drunk, clingy as hell. I left him after he smashed my windshield in a fight. He begged me to come back, left flowers on my porch, started emailing me weird stuff about unfinished business and how we're not done yet. I blocked him on everything, changed my number, but I know it was him, because 2 weeks before the scratching, I caught a glimpse of a car parked at the bottom of my driveway just past the tree line. Not someone I recognized. Didn't think much of it at the time. But now, I feel watched all the time. Like someone sitting out in the woods, staring through binoculars. I even started sleeping with the knife under my pillow, windows locked tight, floodlights on motion sensors. I know I sound paranoid, but listen when you live alone, 10 miles from town, with no one nearby but trees and wind, you learn to trust your gut. And my gut's screaming that this ain't over. Sometimes I swear I hear footsteps on the gravel outside, but when I check, there's nothing. I've got a shotgun now, loaded and leaned by my nightstand, and I keep my phone charged and in reach at all times. I will tell you about that night that nearly broke me. The night we thought we were just getting away from everything. We were young, early 20s, and stupid enough to think that a weekend camping trip would clear our heads. We picked a spot deep in the Appalachian mountains, just the two of us and the wilderness. Sarah and I wanted peace. The first few hours were textbook calm. We pitched the tent near a small clearing, set up the fire. Sarah was fussing with the fire like it was going to run off on us, making sure it was just right. I was setting up the camp stove, figuring we'd eat something decent after a day of hiking. The air was crisp, the smell of pine sharp and clean, and for a minute it felt like we'd escaped everything shitty. But the woods have their own way of reminding you who's boss. Out of nowhere, some dog started barking, loud and sharp. It wasn't a random yip or a friendly howl. This was frantic, panicked barking, like the dog had seen something terrible. From the sounds, I figured it came from a campsite a good distance away, maybe some other fool's dumb enough to be out there late. For a solid 10 minutes, that dog didn't quit. Barking, howling, tearing through the quiet like it wanted to rip something apart. Sarah and I sat by the fire, trying to pretend we didn't hear it, try to ignore that growing knot in our guts. Eventually, the barking stopped. Silence slammed back in, heavy and thick. We shook it off and settled around the fire, pulling out my tablet to watch a dumb horror movie. Something cheesy to lighten the mood. But the woods had other plans. Suddenly, the barking started again. But this time, it wasn't just scared. It was vicious. Angry. Like a warning shot fired in the dark. That dog was screaming at something we couldn't see, and it felt like the woods themselves were holding their breath. I told Sarah I was going to check it out. She told me to stay put, that maybe it was nothing. But you don't get to stay put when something's out there creeping closer. I grabbed my flashlight, the one I'd packed just in case, and stepped outside. The dog was there, just on the edge of the clearing. It stopped barking the second it saw me, like it knew I was the only chance we had. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught it. I spun around, shining the flashlight, and then I saw it. A figure, lurking behind a gravestone in that tiny cemetery on the edge of the campsite. Blood-stained clothes, a dagger dripping fresh blood clenched tight in one hand, and eyes cold, dead eyes locked on me like I was prey. The dog went berserk, barking and snarling like it wanted to tear that thing apart. I felt my heart pound so loud I thought it was going to blow right through my ribs. "Sarah," I yelled, voice sharp as broken glass. "Call the Rangers." Now. The figure didn't move, just stared, like it was weighing whether I was worth the trouble or not. Then, slow as death, it turned and melted back into the trees. I didn't wait to see what happened next. I ran back to Sarah, grabbed the phone from her trembling hands. She dialed as fast as she could. When the Rangers finally showed up, all they found was the dog tense, wild-eyed, but alone. No bloody figure. No footprints. Nothing but the cold, empty woods. They looked at us like we were nuts, said maybe it was a prank, or we were imagining things. But I know what I saw. What we saw. That wasn't some trick. It wasn't some story to scare kids. That was something real. We didn't stay a minute longer. Packed up fast, moving through the woods, with the dog barking still echoing in my ears. The silence after was worse, like the woods were waiting for us to make a mistake. So yeah, that's the night that nearly tore us apart. The night we found out the woods don't forget, and they don't forgive. I was 17, barely out of high school, when I got my first real job working the general store at a camping resort near the deep in the woods of rural North Carolina. This place is the kind where people romanticize secluded, surrounded by whispering trees and fresh mountain air. But beneath all that natural beauty was something that gnawed at me, a kind of silent isolation that only those who've lived in the sticks can understand. Krista, my mom's best friend, ran the resort and gave me the job. It seemed like the perfect summer gig. Tourists came and went. I rang up snacks, firewood, ice, the usual. I cleaned the shelves, restocked the coolers, and listened to stories from families who thought camping was a wild adventure. But it didn't take long for my summer dream to sour. That day was Thursday, when a big man, late 40s, maybe early 50s, mountain man type, dirty and hulking. He had tangled beard, like it had been neglected for years. He moved with a slow, deliberate heaviness, like each step was a silent warning. He bought a few basic things, beef jerky, a bar of soap that looked like it had been made in someone's backyard. Then he stared at me. I don't mean a glance or a long look. I mean, he scanned me like I was livestock he was sizing up at the county fair. "You make this soap?" he asked. "Maybe," I said. "Sometimes I help Krista with the stock." "You cook too?" "Sometimes." He grinned, yellow teeth poking through his beard. "I want to marry you." I didn't answer. My skin crawled. It wasn't what he said. It was how he said it, like he'd already made a decision for me. Krista laughed it off when I told her. "He's harmless, just lonely. Lives off in one of those old cabins. Probably hasn't had a conversation in a year. Lonely or not, he kept showing up. At first, every few days. Then almost daily. He'd talk about his cabin in the woods, said he built it with his own hands. Said he lived off the land, hunted, fished, bartered. Sounded like bullshit, but who was I to say? The way he talked about me got worse. He'd say stuff like, "A woman like you could make a man whole again." Or, "With your hips, you'd carry strong sons." I stopped engaging. I'd duck in the back when he came in, and Krista would ring him up. She still didn't think he was a threat, but my gut knew better. Then came the night I'll never forget. Krista left early. I was closing alone. It was nearly 10 p.m. The sun had long since dipped behind the trees, and the world outside was black and silent. I locked up the store, turned off the lights, and headed to my car, an old Honda that barely survived high school with me. As soon as I stepped outside, I noticed it. A beat-up blue pickup, parked like it had been there for hours. I knew that truck. It was his. I looked around. No one. Just the gravel crunching under my boots. I got into my car and locked the doors before doing anything else. A habit drilled into me since childhood. I jammed the key in, turned it, and nothing. Not even a weak sputter. I cursed and tried again. Still nothing. Dead. Then I heard it. A loud knock on my window, sharp and violent. I jumped so hard my keys flew from my hands. He was there. "Need some help?" he asked, tapping on the glass. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would shatter my ribs. "No," I snapped. "My dad's on his way." He laughed. "No, he's not." I froze. How the hell did he know I was lying? "Open the door," he said, louder now, trying the handle. No. I stared him dead in the eye, forcing my voice to stay steady. Go away. He didn't like that. His face twisted into something grotesque. He started pounding on the glass, over and over, yanking on the door handle. I grabbed my phone and called the police immediately. The dispatcher picked up, and I tried to explain what was happening. She told me officers were on their way. I told her they'd better be fast. Then everything went quiet. He stepped back from the window. I thought maybe he'd come to his senses. But then I saw it. He was walking back to his truck, and when he turned around again, he was holding a crowbar. No. I screamed, slamming my fists against the horn. He walked up and raised that crowbar and brought it down on my driver's side window with a sickening crack. I screamed again, crawled down to the passenger side floorboard, and curled up, covering my neck. Crowbar hit again. Another crack. The window wasn't going to last. I was screaming into the phone now, begging the dispatcher to hurry, crying, shouting, not knowing what to do. Then something changed. Men yelling. One of them barked out something like, "Back the hell up." I peeked over the dashboard. 2 guys were marching toward my car, one holding a shotgun, the other a flashlight. I recognized them campers from earlier that day. They'd stayed up the hill. Regulars. Mountain Man stopped. He looked at them. "Drop the damn crowbar," the guy with the shotgun yelled. Then he dropped it, raised his hands, and backed away. The cops showed up not long after. They took him down hard. I gave my statement through clenched teeth. I was shaking but furious. He'd almost had me. He'd tried to take me, and no one had believed me when I said he was dangerous. A week later, Krista pulled me aside. Her face was pale. The police had searched his cabin. What they found was worse than anything I could have imagined. He'd been living in filth-old blankets, rotted food, jars of God knows what, and a journal. A whole damn book filled with his thoughts. My name was on nearly every page. He'd written about me in detail. Sick fantasies, plans, how I'd be the perfect wife, how I'd cook his food, bear his children. He described my clothes, my voice, even the way I smelled. The last entry was about that night. He called it the harvest. I don't work at that store anymore. I can't even drive past the place without feeling like my lungs are being squeezed. But I didn't let it break me. Not completely.